Welcome to day number 4 of the Can Diversity Collective's Inkwell Beach. Please give us a round of applause for still being here on day 4. You guys are up and early in the rain. Another shout out to the previous panel sponsored by UWG. That was so powerful. Please give them a round of applause. Monique, who's here, the whole team who's still here. We're super excited about everything that's happening at Inkwell Beach. We're super excited about our next panel that's coming up. So I hope you guys will remain engaged. We have another full day of exciting programming. If you don't know me, my name is Adrienne C. Smith. I'm the founder of the Can Diversity Collective. This is our year 4 being at the Cannes Lions International Festival of Creativity. I think that also deserves a round of applause. So I'm not going to talk to you not a minute more because I'm super excited to introduce the next panel that's coming up next. The title is Consumers as Stakeholders, the New Asset Class. Introducing Rashad Bilal and Troy Millings. Come on up. Nika Unkpai, forgive me for if I butchered your name, okay? Chief Investment Officer at Pop Venture, Chris Lyons, President of Web3 Media A16Z, and TJ Adeshola, Operating Partner at Arctos Partners.
All right, so for people that may not be familiar, I just want to give all of you an opportunity. Maybe, Chris, you can start to kind of just break down your backstory and how you got to this point in your career.
Cool. So first and foremost, good to see everybody. Welcome to today, Thursday. We're having a great day. Good to see everybody in the building. So yeah, I'm Chris. I'm one of the general partners at Andreessen Horowitz. I'm president of Web3 Media here at A16Z. So, you know, my journey has really just been a constant evolution of trying to figure out where the intersection of culture and innovation really succeeds. So when you think about the next generation of technology businesses and the people that are really going to help impact culture and help impact the next generation of where, you know, you're thinking about the future of media, future of AI, crypto, you name it, at some point, it's going to have to go mainstream. And if these businesses are going to go mainstream, everything might start in what we call Silicon Valley or, you know, just where the traditional tech businesses are going to really evolve. But, you know, if you're going to really make it to that next stage, you're going to actually need to, you know, get into mainstream culture. And if you think about all types of consumer culture specifically, where did that really start and who are the leaders of that? And that actually, you know, for us and how I see the world, it really comes from Black culture. And how can we kind of bring these two worlds together? And so for me, like just constant evolution, I'm thinking about from investing to, you know, just bringing people from outside of the industry to really kind of connect those dots is really how we see the world. And so I started off as a music producer and engineer from working with Jermaine Dupri. Was a founder of a company in the restaurant technology space. And then from there, just really started moving into kind of really opening up the doors for the next generation of where Silicon Valley can kind of go from there. So,
good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I appreciate the response. We love a call and response. First and foremost, I want to thank the Inkwell Beach team for having us. I am honored.
Inkwell in the building.
I am honored to share a stage and space with all of these men who I've admired for a very long time. I'm the Chief Investment Officer at Pop Venture. I am a recovering lawyer. I practiced for about a decade, doing primarily anti-bribery, anti-corruption, and anti-money laundering work on behalf of big corporations. And I jokingly say, but I mean it, my sole job was to keep the C-suite out of jail at all costs, all over the world. So from Angola to Azerbaijan, my job was to figure out what happened, figure out who we need to fire, figure out who we need to turn over to the authorities, and then beg the government for leniency. And I did that for a decade. And during the pandemic, I realized that that work did not feed my soul. I realized that I was spending all of my time and talent and treasure working on behalf of people who were doing good work. Everybody has issues within their companies. But I felt like there was more for me. I felt like it was a good plan, but it wasn't God's plan. And so I started looking at what really drove me, what really fueled my passion. I always talk about the pursuit of where passion meets purpose. And I found a lot of purpose in building new things. I'm an architect by nature. So I founded a very popular social app in Brazil, at least according to Forbes. And it grew crazy because of just a little,
Life flex.
like,
Slight flex.
and it grew in a way that really surprised me. And I was the only employee, along with my co-founder. I was tech support. I was answering the DMs. I was troubleshooting, and I found more purpose and passion in that. And so I wanted to really lean into it more. And so I leaned into entrepreneurship and investment really during the pandemic. My practice of law was very global. We had active investigations in South Africa, Angola, Kenya, Tanzania, Dubai, the UAE, Algeria, Nigeria, Ghana. But in March of 2020, when there were no more flights to be had, and it was just me doing the work via Zoom or WebEx in my 1,000 square foot apartment by myself, I realized that it wasn't sustainable for me and that it wasn't worth my wellness, my mental health. And so I wanted to focus on things that brought me joy. And Deepak was up here a couple days ago. I don't know how many of you saw that, but he spoke about founders focusing on exits, but not thinking about their final exit. And when you think about how fragile life is, we lost millions of people during the pandemic, right? When you think about how fragile life is, and you think about the fact that tomorrow's not promised, it gives you a different drive and a different sense of purpose when you're allocating your time day to day. And so I decided to focus on what brought me joy, and that's building tech solutions, that's democratizing access to financial products, that's helping others grow wealth in a way that I've been fortunate enough to do. I came from very, very humble beginnings. My parents are immigrants from Nigeria. Shout out to, I know y'all out here.
The Niger team.
To the world. I leaned into this concept of just because I wasn't born a billionaire doesn't mean I can't be one. Just because I wasn't born a millionaire doesn't mean I can't be one. And so I started building things that helped me grow wealth, helped my friends grow wealth. And fast forward, it's been a couple years. I've invested in about 40 startups, my own capital. And my law school roommates, we've collectively syndicated.
Oh, nobody, I didn't hear no thumbs to that. Like, what happened?
It's all good.
Like, come on.
Let's go, let's go.
We need that. We got to encourage that.
We've collectively syndicated round closures for about 300 startups. And I want to shout out Ashley Flukas in particular via Flukas Ventures. We've deployed probably over $100 million as 3 black girls from Florida into startups in a space that never wanted us, in a space that never welcomed us. And so I'm excited about what's next, because the great experiment is, if we invite more people to the decision table, can we build a portfolio that looks more like America as opposed to the portfolios that we see traditionally? And I will get off my soapbox in a moment, but 98% of venture goes to young white male Stanford dropouts. I'm exaggerating just a little bit, but a lot of venture goes to white men. And women get a smaller percentage. Black people get a smaller percentage. Black women get an even smaller percentage. And so my great hope is that if we can democratize access to the private capital markets, we might be able to get a portfolio that looks more like the room that's in here today, and that is more reflective of the true innovation happening in every corner of the United States of America.
Should we leave?
TJ, I'm
Assume we just dropped the mic.
TJ, I guess it's your turn.
That's why you cut in front of me to sit down. I see.
No, I cut in front of you because the panel is gender imbalanced.
Okay.
Yes.
And I wanted y'all to look good.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
And she will be running for president.
I love y'all.
Of the world.
That's a fact.
President of the world. Yeah, TJ,
Got your cabinet right here. We got your back.
can you please tell us about your impression?
Yeah. I take a lot of pride in knowing that my voice has lasted longer than my fellow panelists. So thank you for that. My friends to the right and to the left. My name's TJ Adeshola. What's interesting about my career is it sat at the intersection of digital and social media for about 10 to 15 years. I started in sports at ESPN. And at the time, we started to incorporate this thing called Facebook, this thing called Twitter within live programming, right? So what started to happen was, as we were incorporating social into live programming, we were like, wait a minute, this is a business. All of a sudden, we started selling tweets and selling Facebook posts without providing any data or any analytics to brands. Brands just wanted vibes on social. So as I noticed that early on in my career, I'm like, well, wait a minute, who's working at these social companies? And I did what any impatient young person in a cubicle would do. I looked around my cube, I saw nobody was walking by, and I went on LinkedIn and applied for a job at Twitter. And I was in 2012, right before we went public. We didn't have any categories, we didn't have any verticals. It was just problem solving. What can we do to ensure that this service that the culture loves so much is democratized and continues to build from a business perspective? Fast forward a few years later, I'm taking our former CEO, Jack Dorsey, to open our first office in Africa, in Ghana.
Shout out to that. That was a big deal, by the way.
Yeah, and we started to build verticals, sports Twitter, Black Twitter, and just finding ways to organically fuel community, consumers, and really, really helping to develop what we now call the creator economy, the influencer economy. A few months later, a pretty rich gentleman acquired the company and changed the name.
I may have heard of him.
Yeah. I worked directly for him for 6 months. I took him to the Super Bowl, and I was like, you know what? We should break up. We should break up amicably.
It's not you.
Amicably.
He was here yesterday.
I mean, he was. So
He tried to apologize. TJ said, no.
The yacht took off before you can get there.
He said, here's my calendar.
And I'll never forget, the last thing I did before I stepped down was I said to his name, I said, February is Black History Month. I need you to approve budget for the Black employees that are remaining here to have an activation. And he was like, I don't know what that means, but okay, and we did it. I transitioned from that to the sports private equity space. I mentioned that my entire career has been in sports. So I'm an operating partner at a company called Arctos Partners. We deployed north of $5 billion across sports franchises around the globe. We are the largest aggregation of institutional capital for sports leagues. Golden State Warriors, Los Angeles Dodgers, PSG, Boston Red Sox. We own 25 teams across our portfolio. I'm the only operating partner of color. And what excites me about that is when we're talking about sports as an asset class, we're talking about consumers, we're talking about fandom, we're talking about community, and we're talking about sports that reflect us. But oftentimes when you look at the ownership, you look at the cap table, the very teams that we have rabid fandom for have no reflection at the cap table, at the ownership table. But the people buying tickets, the people buying jerseys, the people getting their tweets off, the people getting their IG stories off are people who look like us. So how do we bridge the gap between the fans and the players who are letting blood, sweat, and tears out on the field and on the court to the cap room and to the table? So I'm excited about the fact to just disrupt the shit out of what's going on the sports ownership side.
Might I? Yes. I wanna double click on something TJ just mentioned, because the same very rich man who was next door yesterday famously tweeted that DEI must die, right? And we're here just a few feet away saying DEI will never die, don't believe the hype. And that's powerful. It's not lost upon me the moment that we're in. DEI is not a fad. I know it got very popular in 2020. A lot of companies made a lot of commitments, and we see now a rollback. And I'm very excited to have these gentlemen on the panel because I know they have the courage of their conviction, and I know that we're gonna speak truth to power on this stage today.
Amen. So I heard this quote recently. It says that motivation isn't enough, right? And I like that you said we got to be disruptive. I want to know, what's that trait as you see it? Because plenty of hurdles and challenges. You said you're a recovering attorney. So, I mean, they went over their head, but I heard it. What is that trait that keeps you going each day, knowing what you face, but what's ahead for our community? I guess we'll start with you.
Yeah. I just recognize the importance of us knowing that the opportunity exists. We've heard for years that in order to know you can do something, it's really, really helpful to see that. And particularly in sports, in music, and entertainment, in these categories that drive the culture, on these apps where people are doing TikTok dances that are derived from us, from our creation, oftentimes we are on the opposite end of ownership. We're on the opposite end of equity, right? So knowing that we are the creators, we are the sauce, we all know that 10 out of 10 times, it's really, really, really important for people to be bold, to be disruptive, to be innovative, and say, all right, if we're gonna be the sauce, we're gonna be the ones who own this sauce as well. So for me, it's just, it's a responsibility. And it doesn't feel like work because I recognize that the work is bigger than me as a person. The objective is to do it to fuel the collective.
That's awesome. So I have 5 personal values that are personal unto me. The first is to lead with authenticity. The second is to be of service. The third is to act with integrity. And I mentioned that at the table yesterday at lunch. I almost got away with not paying for my drink, but I was like, I can't do it. Got to act with integrity.
What was you drinking? The good stuff.
Rosé?
Obviously, rosé all day.
Rosé all day.
The fourth is to push boundaries. And the fifth is to maximize legacy. And Walt Disney famously said, or was it Roy Disney? Famously said that when you know your values, it makes it very easy to make decisions. And so when I wake up every day and I'm thinking about how I want to spend my time, it's in service to others, and it's in pursuit of greatness. It's in pursuit of maximizing that legacy. And when I think about legacy or creative opportunities, I genuinely believe that service to many is what leads to greatness. And so just finding a way to serve the many is a bite-sized way for me to determine whether or not I'm spending my time whether or not it's time well spent. And that's why I'm so excited to talk to you about Pop Venture. We're on a mission to democratize access to private capital markets in a way that's never been done before. Currently, only accredited investors can really play in private markets and realize the returns on these very lucrative investment opportunities. And there are people in power who say that if you don't make a certain amount of money, if you don't have a certain threshold of investable assets, you are not sophisticated enough to evaluate a private deal. And at POP, we believe that if you can balance a checkbook, I'm about to age myself, if you can balance a checkbook, if you can budget, if you can keep food on the kitchen table, pay your rent, pay your car, you are sophisticated enough to determine how you spend your money. And so all these artificial barriers that have been erected to keep people out of these opportunities, we're on a mission to tear down. And that's why I'm so excited to share space with all of you, because you've all done this already. You've seen the problem, you've solved proportions of the problem, and there's still more work to be done. And I believe that collectively we can build an ecosystem that allows everyone equal access. Doesn't mean equal outcomes, but equal opportunity to participate in public and private markets.
Love it. It's the facts. I mean, look, so for me, there's a lot of, points that we can go into and just echoing everybody today. The number one thing really for how we see the world is access to information. And so, we're the number one venture capital firm in the world. When we think about finding opportunities, there's a couple things. Like, one, you have to do things that don't seem like they're good things. Like good ideas, we call them good ideas that look like bad ideas, right? It's like that from an investment strategy. So if you think about like, who thought it was a good idea to sit in a stranger's car, right? And like that ended up transforming, Uber and Lyft ended up transforming the entire industry. Or who thought it was a good idea to sleep in a go in a random home, like these are things that sound crazy at the time, but actually are what really drive the future of the business. And so, but being in the room and having the conversations and seeing things at the very early stage, like they're not sharing the information. Like one of the reasons, so I helped lead Clubhouse back during the pandemic days, and the number one reason that I was like, okay, this is gonna take off is because people that were in the room, like it started off as a tech only conversation, and they were sharing all the juice, all the tea, this is what you should be doing, this is how you need to go, this is where you need to, and I'm like, okay, well, none of us are in the room, so I literally I had unlimited invites, ended up sharing it to all my friends out in Atlanta.
Appreciate
exactly, but that's what took it off, right? And same thing with like, Bitcoin and Coinbase, right? So raise your hand if you bought any Bitcoin at like $10,000, like at the price. No, nobody bought it $10,000.
I brought it at 6,000.
6,000, 5,000, 200. Look, I was in Atlanta. I'm telling my homies, I'm like, yo, you need to buy. This was $200, $300, $400, 1,000, 5,000, 10,000. But they're like, okay, well, I don't know what this is, right? Nobody knows what's really going on until you can actually say, hey, this is where we need to actually move the dial, and this is where the future is going. And it's important to actually share the number one value. And this is what Troy and Rashad do so well is share the access to the information, because it's happening right in front of you every single day. It's like whether or not you want to scroll on Instagram or you want to scroll on Robinhood, like the opportunities and the next stages of where things can happen are going on right now. And if we're not creating that medium and creating the way for you to democratize information and make things simple and easy to understand and make it that it revolves the same way as like in 25 minutes we all knew they're not like us, like every word for word, but like how do we not know, what the next like the next Vanguard fund or like NVIDIA, you guys been calling out NVIDIA for the past 3 years, right? So, you know what I'm saying? So it's like we need to be able to actually share the access to the information. And, for us is when we think about, venture capital and when we think about the next generation of technology, like if we're not thinking about us at the same time, then we're gonna miss the mark. And if the next generation of wealth, I mean, look, it's very clear at this point, the next generation of wealth is happening within the technology industry. And every single thing in the future is gonna have a piece of tech. My founder of A16Z is named Mark Andreessen. He coined the term "software is eating the world," where it's like, software is eating it ate your watch, it ate the maps, it ate every single piece of technology, every single piece of thing is gonna have a component of it. And if we're not at the seat of the table, if we're not ahead of the curve, then we're gonna be left behind. So, that's my why in terms of making this thing happen.
So, Chris, I want to stay there. Shout out, clap it up for Chris for sure.
Thank you.
Very well spoken. So, we spoke last year about NFTs and your opinion on how people just didn't fully understand it yet, right? And how everything is going to eventually merge together when you're talking about cryptocurrency and artificial intelligence and NFTs and everything. So over the course of the last 12 months since we had that conversation, the whole world has changed when it comes to artificial intelligence. So I would like to hear your viewpoint on where do you think we're headed when it comes to technology, and if your original thesis still holds true with all of the worlds kind of merging together at some point in time.
Yeah, I mean, look, real quick, I would just say that this is the best time in the world because we have access to the world's data. We have access to the world's information at our fingertips. Like, there's an app, it's called gamma.app, right? And I would encourage everybody to try it. It's like a modern day PowerPoint presentation, like PowerPoint or Keynote, but you can literally type in, I want to make a cookie business in Cairns that's focused on the beach, and it's gonna literally create an entire 10-page PowerPoint presentation for you, right? And do get all the work for you. So now it's like it creates unlimited access, unlimited opportunity. And even like when you think about just the future of companies and how they're going to be built, like, I mean, there's a lot of entrepreneurs in the building right now. And how you build your business in 2020 versus 2024 is completely different. Because now you have, like, you're the CMO, you're the CTO, you know, you're the CEO. You have entire world of information and access right there in front of you. Same thing with education, right? It's like, think about like if, you know, where I grew up, it wasn't necessarily the best form, you know, I didn't have the best teachers, right? But now you have a teacher that is on your phone with AI, ready at any point, any moment to deliver empathy, you know, from a student. Like, okay, hey, you can learn any education, any language, any model. Like, there's so many different things that are going to really transcribe with the future now that AI is, and people think this thing just happened. AI has been going on for 60 years. So you have to really kind of, it's just now reached the consumer and the everyday person, but it takes 60 years for something like this to really happen and for us to really have this access into these tools and, you know, use them. Because if you're not going to use them, somebody else that's sitting right next to you that's trying to find the next big thing is going to use it. And so don't be afraid. Like, it's your superpower. It's your cheat code. And, you know, you need to be able to know that you have it right there with you. And there's more and more projects and tools that are going to happen. But, you know, there's what a time to be alive.
What a time.
Like, I want to come to you because I think he's right. And Chris said a few words that resonate with me specifically when he said the word that we're going to be left behind. And so we know that technology is the greatest creator of wealth, definitely for our generation, but for future generations as well. And so, obviously, as an angel investor, are you looking at companies that are focused on technology? Because I feel that, yes, we use the technology, we're the consumers of the technology, we're almost a byproduct, so we've made a lot of these technology companies thrive and function to the way they're at, but we're not creating them at the same level. So when you're looking to invest, is that a focused interest of you, or like of yours? We need to get more people that look like us inside these companies creating?
Absolutely. I think that when you look at solving real world problems with technology, you create a multiplicative effect that you just can't duplicate with other categories. And when I say other categories, I'm talking brick and mortar shops, consumer packaged goods even though I've seen some interesting things in CPG as well. When you talk about reaching scale, if you're doing something and you're the absolute best at what you do, unless you can clone yourself, you can't do it at scale. When you're able to build a technology solution, it doesn't need a vacation. It doesn't get tired. It doesn't, it doesn't need a break. You have to maintain it, obviously, but you're able to solve the same problem for multiple communities across the board with this one solution that you built. And I should also mention, I forgot to mention when I was introducing myself, I'm a 2-time tech founder as well. So thank you. So I own that dating app in Brazil, Culture Crush, check it out. I also co-founded an early-stage financial technology company that's based in DC that allows groups of friends and family to save and invest together with one transparent dashboard, even if everybody banks somewhere different. And so when you think about all the use cases, we're talking about the church building fund, we're talking about the group trips. These are things that we deal with all the time in our day-to-day lives. And so when I'm talking to founders, I'm looking at people who are solving problems that they really understand, that they've grappled with. And I'm looking at whether or not they are the right person and they have the right team to solve that specific problem. And I want to double click on something Chris said a moment ago. People are afraid of AI. We have friends who have degrees in artificial neural networks dating back to 2005. What's up, sis? People have been working on this for a very long time. And so AI is not going to take your job. The people who understand how to prompt it will take your job. The people who are interacting with it will take your job. And I'm going to say something that I said in the Hamptons a few weeks ago that made people uncomfortable. If you are not currently using why are you laughing?
Where were you at when you said it? Remember when we went to the Hamptons?
Exactly.
It was like
With my
last
feet nice and stand, doing my thing.
If you are not currently using a GPT daily, you are already behind. And I want you to sit with that because it's not about being lazy. It's not about taking shortcuts. AI cannot write as well as I can. I am a lyrical wordsmith, genius, but it can get me started. And so if you're able to leverage a technology that can give you a starting point, you just saved yourself hours. Hours that you can use doing something else that's
Not
going to
even
make
hours,
you money.
days, years. Like, if you have a book idea, like everybody, raise your hand if you have a
Write my
book
book.
idea. All right, you could just be like, this is my book idea. Let's get it started. And then just like that, boom.
I mean, it's one of these things where it's like, I don't know how you would be able to function in today's society without using ChatGPT or something similar, right? Like, I use it every single day, and it's the equivalent of doing math with a calculator as far as long division. Why would you really sit there and do long division? Nobody does long division, right?
There's no brownie points for that?
Even if you can do long division.
Well, it just doesn't make any sense. That's the whole point of having a calculator, right? Or it's like, okay, well, you can walk to the store, you can drive, right? I mean, unless you're trying to just get extra cardio, why would you waste 45 minutes when you could take a 5-minute, 10-minute drive? So
Exactly.
It's like, this AI stuff is damn near magic. When you don't even really have to complete a thought, it actually thinks for you, and it's on your phone, and it's free.
Exactly.
So it's like, if you're not using it, you're really doing yourself a disservice, because it's like, why would you have one of the most powerful tool ever created in history of the world at your fingertips, and you're trying to debate about if Drake or Kendrick won?
Right.
Right. I want to add one more point to that, because these large language models are limited by what they know. They're iterative. They're learning every single day. And the people who are using them are helping them learn. And so when people who look like us aren't using the tools, they're not learning inclusive ideas. And so we can't even begin to have a conversation around eliminating algorithmic bias if we aren't using the tools ourselves. So I really want to double click on that.
No, it's a big thing. We spoke to Robert Smith about that, because the people that's actually programming it is a very small percent of the population. So it's like, when people say, like, you're made in God's image, like, they're making artificial intelligence in their image. So if only 1/4% is actually programming it for 300 million people in America and billions of people all around the world, now you have 7 billion people that are reflected off of 100 people, right? And all of those 100 people are very similar, but they have no commonality with the 7 billion people that's actually going to use what they're creating. So that's actually extremely dangerous. That's a whole conversation within itself, but that's why more people need to be behind the scenes, like what you guys are doing, right? But TJ, I want to ask you a question as far as consumers as a new asset class. That's the name of this panel, and it's a very interesting, subject title. So, what are your thoughts? Can you expound upon that? Because it's interesting. You think about asset classes, you think about real estate, you think about stocks. You don't really think about consumers as an asset class. But everybody that's a business owner has a consumer, whether it's B2C or you're dealing directly with people or other businesses. So, talk about that for a little bit if you can.
Yeah, it's interesting because particularly at the corporate side, there's this tendency to say, all right, if I invest in this today and I don't see an ROI tomorrow, is it really something worth investing in? And when you think about consumers and developing affinity, developing community, over time, that turns into a long-term asset for you. You continue to create stickiness. You continue to deepen affinity that you have with a team, with a product, with a particular thing that you enjoy, a restaurant, right? So on the team side, we've been talking to a lot of COOs and CFOs, and they're like, does marketing really work? Why is it important to deepen my affinity with my consumers? And the point is, the reason why you deepen your affinity with your consumers is because as an asset class, the more you invest, the more long-term value you deduce from that consumer base.
I want to touch on something about the AI piece, because I think all of you, again, can answer it from a unique space. What I heard from the responses was fear and trust. When new technology is brought to us, where first we'll use it, but we don't really trust it, right? And so it reminds me of how we used to feel about banks, right? Like we don't want to put our money there because we've been burned by it. We don't want to use this because we've had a negative history with it. I wonder, as you're looking at the landscape and all of you are dealing with technology, how do we combat that? Like, what are some strategies that we can use to overcome some of these fears, some of these trusts, so that we can get ahead, create, build, innovate at the level we need to?
It's one of the things. Chris mentioned this earlier, and I don't know if we gave enough room for it to breathe. It's why the platform that you two brothers have created is so important. Because you're sharing the information at scale, one, and you're sharing it in a way that isn't esoteric. You're not using 5-syllable words. You're talking like we talk. And that's why people have been able to feel like they relate with you guys, because you've created this platform and you do it in a special way. So I just want to make sure you brothers get your flowers.
Appreciate
for
that,
sharing,
brother. Appreciate
for
that.
sharing the information. I had a conversation with my mother the other day. She was like, "Why are you using AI? Why are you doing it?" Right? The same person who, when we go through the airport, I'm in my TSA pre-check and clear. She's like, "I'm not scanning my face. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it."
Exactly.
So she might miss a flight. And then I got a decision to make as a son. Am I waiting for my mama or am I hopping on the flight, right? But to your point, this
DJ, you know the answer.
Yeah, that's facts.
Book it to the next one.
You know, TJ already on Delta, like, all right.
But yo, Mom, you made it?
We got a 3:30 after this.
But there's this inherent trepidation of early adopting for us. But then once we adopt, we're the ones who take it to the next level. So bridging the gap between early adoption and late adoption is something that requires education, i.e. the platforms that you all have built to share broadly. We have to debunk these notions. And sometimes it's picking up the phone and saying, yo, open up ChatGPT right now and use it. Here's how it works.
Exactly.
Say, draft an email to a prospective employer. No, I don't talk like that. Draft it in a voice that sounds like this. It's iterative. It'll respond to you in real time. So we actually have to hold each other accountable, pick up the phone and be like, use this. Here's how. Oftentimes we hoard the information. That's one of the things I love about Chris. If there's an opportunity to be like, yo, have you heard about this? Here's how it works. Let's use it. Share the information. We have the platforms. You sharing the shirt off pics on the South of France drinking a rosé. You might as well share the latest trick and hack that you use or you learned on AI as well.
Yep. I'll give you, I'm going to give you a funny story, but then also, the real thing is that, like, and we talk about this when we were talking about crypto and now AI is here. Like, people think that these things are just, like, temporary things. Like once the cat is out the bag, even like on the policy side, on like people trying to shut down AI, people trying to shut down crypto, it just takes time because they don't know. These are new things. Same thing happened when Airbnb first came out. There was no rules around like having somebody rent out your own home like this, right? And so like once the cat's out the bag, it's good forever. Same thing with the music industry. Like you can point back time and time again. Like when people were, like they're selling records and all of a sudden, you know, the streaming services and you know LimeWire and Napster, like we're dating ourselves, but this is like literally. I mean, if you use LimeWire, like, put your hands up, man, because that was the fucking time of your life. You already know what that was. You're like, yo, I'll see you later, Target. I got this thing.
You wrote a creative album title on the CD-ROM, too?
Exactly. Yo, I was slanging mixtapes because I was like, yo, I don't need to go.
That's a fact.
Friday night, we outside?
Exactly. Run for your life now. Anywho, what I'm saying is that once the cat's out the bag, like it's not stopping. And I'll give you the because it's happening right now in the music industry as well too with generative AI music. And I have to tell all these musicians, I'm like, listen, when I was first of all, like I went to school for music production and engineering, and we had to use this big old like digital, you know, SSL 9000, where everybody takes pictures of, you know, like within the studio, working hard, hardly working. But you don't even use that. Everything was in a sorry.
The rosé is kicking in.
Everything was you literally used the computer. You literally used the computer for everything, right? And then so like I remember there was a time when like with the auto-tune. So when auto-tune came out, it was not meant for T-Pain and, you know, Lil Wayne and everybody. It was meant for like Mariah Carey, like just to literally tune in the very like 0.05% of your sound in order to get it right, right? And so when I was in the studio in Atlanta, we figured out how to use auto-tune the wrong way, okay? They literally were like, I was in a studio session. They're like, all right, I need the auto-tune to sound like, nah, you know? I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, I need you to turn, and I'm like literally on Google, like trying to figure out how to do auto-tune the wrong way. And they had to crank it this way, crank it that way. It was not what it was meant for, but that's what happened. And the guys who created auto-tune would have never thought, 0% chance thought that they were gonna create some of the biggest artists, Travis Scott, T-Pain, Lil Wayne, you name it, from their technology. They created it this way and ended up going this way. That's what's about to happen with AI. That's what's about to happen with crypto. They have this thing in terms of how they want to use it. Once we get our hands on it, it's a whole different thing. And it's for us to really get a chance to play with these tools and understand how to use it. So then that way, when we do be able to start to break it and shake it, like we're going to create our own thing, but we need to know the information right now.
Love that.
That was a great analogy.
Love it.
Sure.
And on the point of regulation, it's never moving at the same pace as innovation, ever. In the history of these United States of America, the government is doing what it can, but technological innovation, to Chris's point, once it's out there and we become accustomed to it, it's hard to stop. Another good example is Uber. Had Uber sought regulatory approval first, we would not have Uber. It would have died in its infancy because the incumbents, when you're being really disruptive, turns out you piss people off. The incumbents have way more money, way more resources, way more lobbyists. The taxi lobby spent millions upon millions of dollars trying to get Uber shut down instead of just building an app for a couple $100,000, right?
Yep.
Don't hate, innovate. And the thing about it is, once they flooded the market and we were all taking Ubers, we know what it's like for a cab to not stop for us. I'll be in a full suit with a briefcase. They will just ride right past. No offense to New York, but wow.
We're working on it.
Today is different, but it's only different because Uber drove that change. Uber forced that change. Taxis don't have the luxury of passing up fares just because of the way you look, right? If we didn't have Uber on demand, we would still be looking out the window waiting for a cab that we called 45 minutes ago with no idea when it's gonna come and no idea when we're going to get where we're going and no idea what it's going to cost. And Uber didn't necessarily build new things. They aggregated things that already existed in a way that made our lives more convenient. And so when you think about technology, you think about problem solving, it's really just as simple as thinking about what's inconvenient in your everyday life and what you might be able to do to solve that inconvenience. Because if it's a pain point for you, it's likely a pain point for a wide swath of the population.
For Chris, okay, you started the first ever all-black led LP venture capital fund, is that correct?
Yeah. 100%.
Called CLF, Culture Leadership Fund. Was it called the Chris Lyons Fund?
Chris Lyons.
He originally thought that.
Hey,
That's a fact.
There's may or may not be true.
But yeah, no, it's very historic, and it has like all of the top athletes, entertainers, very important black people. Earn Your Leisure or
Absolutely.
LP.
We appreciate the support.
Appreciate you. So what's your vision behind that? And talk about the importance of getting black people into venture capital.
Well, look, I mean, this is the whole conversation about this. Like, we're all like, it's not even 12 o'clock yet. Everybody had a crazy night last night. If you're here for, because you're trying. We're gonna have a good time, but we're gonna make it, right? And we're gonna fucking
God dang,
Sorry.
Chris, you
You gotta wait till 12, Chris. Like, you gotta wait till 12, please.
No, because like this is what it's about, right? So if the next, like literally, like this is how it happens. We have to be in the room, and you know when I moved, when I was in Silicon Valley when we weren't even having these conversations. We weren't even talking about DEI. Wasn't even a thing. Like there was no stats. Like it was just going down, and I'm looking around saying, okay. You know, coming from Atlanta, where I still look up to Jeezy and Gucci Man, everybody, to go into seeing somebody go from a Prius to a PJ, I was like, hold on a second. There's a different conversation that's not happening, and so I wanted to make sure that if the next generation of wealth is happening within the technology industry, that we need to have a seat at that table, and so. And also, when you think about like what DJ Khaled did to Snap, and like what happened when every single consumer social app that takes off, it happens once the culture gets a hold of it. TikTok, Instagram, you name it. And from an equity standpoint, they come to us, but they come to us on the Series D, Series E, right before it goes public. So, oh hey, let me make sure we can give you a little shares. The bag has already been passed 5 times. Okay, and so like we were at the end of the road on the equity side, and so the real conversation was like, how can we make sure that you can get in at the very beginning on the investment side, but 2, like when people are building, you touched on this, when people are building these companies, they're not talking to us. You know, they're not saying, oh well, how can we like what is your viewpoint? So this thing is called shared genius, like a Kevin Durant, a Serena Williams. A Kevin Hart, they're the same genius as, a Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk or Rich
Chris
guy.
Lyons.
Or me, yeah, whatever, I'll take it. So what happens when you bring both of those things together at the very beginning and really see kind of how the shared genius and how we see the world, like how products can be built at the same time. And so that was the real emphasis behind it. And at the same time, like let's move the narrative from going from an endorsement model to an equity model, and that's what you guys talk about all the time. And TJ, I mean, you work with athletes every day in terms of shifting the narrative and saying like, rather than let's just end on Uber because we're talking about Uber all day. Beyonce did a concert for Uber. She's like, I don't need you pay me, $500,000. Give me stock.
Pay me in equity.
Pay me in equity. And that what that turned out to is monumental compared to what somebody was cashing. So we have to do a complete 180 in terms of how we see the world and then really start to drive the equity conversation.
Chris it's funny because in NECA's comments and in Chris's comments, NECA talked about disruption by doing. Uber exists not because they waited for permission, they just did. They disrupted by doing. And similarly, even though it might not sound similarly, that's exactly what Chris did with CLF. He disrupted by just doing. Now, we're going to create a fund, and everybody in this fund needs to look like us. And the reason why that's significant is because as TJ, who sits at Arctos Partners with a board full of white men, says, hey, have you seen the work that Andreessen Horowitz has done with CLF? This is why Kevin Durant needs to be at this equity table. This is why NECA needs to be at this table. This is why people who are reflective of the players on the court, the artists who are on stage, need to be reflected on the cap table, right? These conversations that are being had about these companies, these conversations that are had to elevate the company, to identify increased commercialization opportunities, to develop broader awareness for these platforms, they don't exist without the people who actually know it and do it. Disruption by doing. You got to do it.
Got to do it.
I want to stay there
Just do it.
and maybe end there. Disruption by doing. As we sit here, and again, congratulations and shout out to the Inkwell team. This is disruption.
Shout out to Inkwell
doing,
team,
right?
by the
Clap
way.
it up for them.
Listen,
When we think about
Use the last little bit of my voice.
Yeah.
Woo!
the
you
new.
go up and down this whole beach, there's not a crew that looks like this.
Well, that's where I'm going. So this is the new asset class when we talk about it is sitting on the stage, but more importantly, it's sitting out here in this
right.
audience
That's
right
right.
now, right?
Let's
Clap
go.
it up for yourselves.
No, real
Oh,
talk.
clap it up for yourselves.
Like, we look at. I'm taking a picture.
Chris,
We
let me
all-
land
we
it,
all
Chris.
take-
Let me land it. Let me land it.
No, go. We too good at this.
So this is the new asset class, right? This is, I think, the 73rd year of cans, but nothing looks like this, right? And this has happened in recent years. I want to know how you feel about the future of our community as you see this new asset class being built in front of our eyes by disruptive things like this at Cannes.
Yeah, I feel excited because we're having these conversations. This is my 7th Cannes Lions. We were just talking about this in the green room.
Yep.
This never, ever, 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 ever existed, right? The existence of Earn Your Leisure. I've learned so much game from these gentlemen. We've learned so much game
Earn
from
your
these
leisure. I
gentlemen.
mean, just the name itself.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
Earn it. Yo, let's go.
We talk about disruption by doing. We're talking about earning your leisure. Like, 1, doing it. 2, not having a fear for adopting this technology that we're talking about, specifically AI, holding each other, the community, accountable to adopt these tools that exist to make our lives, to make our businesses more efficient. Did they turn off our mics?
Oh, but that.
So ultimately, we have a responsibility with each other to share and to do.
I
love
couldn't
that,
agree
too.
more. I want to put a finer point on what Chris said about the bag being passed 5 times by the time you get an opportunity to invest. That's what has me most excited about Pop Venture. I'll give you a very concrete example, actually. There's a company called Loom that recently sold for $975 million, not too shabby. But it last raised a Series C at $1.5 billion. So it sold at a 36% haircut. And the institutional investors absolutely got their money back, but the people who got in very early, the earliest investors got around a 64, 65x on that investment. And there are people in power who are saying that regular, average Americans who don't make at least 200 grand a year, who don't have at least $1 million in investable assets, cannot participate in that game. And I'm so excited because we have an opportunity to revolutionize the way we build asset classes. And for marketing professionals in the audience, for people who are thinking about advertising, I'm looking forward to a future where you can invest alongside your consumers and make them an asset class in that way. You are fueling innovation every day, but you're not telling those stories. So when Procter & Gamble or Uber even is having a hack week or having some sort of acquisition or investing strategically in a company that they might want to acquire in the future, all those opportunities can and should be presented to the American public for equal participation. And so when you see Pop Venture, look out for it. It's going to be wrapped in a TV show that's going to look like Shark
Let's go.
Tank. But instead of having a dais of sharks, we're going to invite the American public to vote on who gets $1 million from us. And I believe that when you invite more people to the decision table, you'll start to see a portfolio that looks more like this room, that looks more like the entire United States of America, and that looks more like American Idol alum. And I was sharing earlier with some friends that I met over lunch yesterday. We have Fantasia Barrino. We have Ruben Studdard. We also have Kelly Clarkson. We have Clay Aiken. And so I believe that when you democratize access truly, when you let people participate and have skin in the game, that's how you can leverage your consumers as an asset class. Hashtag invest with Inkwell Beach.
Yeah, let's go. Let's go. Look, I'm gonna wrap it real quick, because we could talk about everything. The one thing I would say for this year, raise your hand if this is your first time at Cannes. Look at that. That's what this is about. Because that's amazing to see. Because like TJ said, this thing has been going on years and years and years and years and years and years. And now it's here. And now you guys are here, now we're here, and now it's not going back. The same way as we talk about technology, the same as we talk about access to information, all of us here, we know what it is. Whether or not you said, I'm going to Cannes for whatever you told the company or whatever, we're here. And it is real shit that's happening. Is after 12 I can say real shit
It's
now?
good,
Okay,
especially
so-
12.
Yes, you can.
So, but I'm gonna leave you with one thing. Learn to prompt. Study prompting. And if you don't know what prompting literally means, how to actually curate your things that you're gonna talk about AI. You can easily say, hey, ChatGPT, what are the best restaurants in Cannes, and it's going to give you a list. Or you can say, what are the best 5-star restaurants in Cannes that only deliver this type of food, that give you this type of thing, in the layers and the depth in terms of how you actually deliver your messages is what's going to actually give you the higher quality information. And the next 5 years, probably next 2-3 years, there's going to be AI degrees on prompting. And the more high quality you actually communicate, and the more detailed and the more specific that you guys are actually talking to these language models, the better it's going to work for you. And the more detailed, the more high quality you're going to be. Like, I mean, you said it's like, rather than just saying, oh, hey, write a job resume. Like, you can say, like, write a job resume in the style of Chris Rock. And it's going to give you a whole thing. Because if that's how your personality is, and that's who you are, it's going to tailor it specifically to you. And so I would just leave you by saying that if you're going to build a business, if you're going to start anything, and you don't have some sort of crypto or AI strategy, it's going to be a hard road. But if you have these things integrated into your business, like, you're going to be 10 steps ahead, because the company that is building things with AI and the company that is building things without AI, it's not even night and day. And so from an investment perspective, from a personal, venture and your financial freedom perspective, like, you have to have these tools. And so that's what I would leave you with. And since it's 12 o'clock, I can literally say, like, let's fucking go.
12:08.
Let's go, guys. Let's go.
Everybody, please thank our panel. Rashid,
Let's go.
Troy, Nika, Chris, and TJ.